Good morning, everybody. The Simple Handicap for Wednesday, September 4th. Thank you for making me a part of your morning. Hope your Wednesday is off to a fantastic start. And mornings like this are exactly what the podcast here was made for. Yesterday was a crazy day for NFL moves in the market, point spreads and totals going all over the place. So we will get to each and every game, breaking down all the movement to get you up to date. Before we do, I want to remind everybody that Wednesday mornings are live stream preview mornings. It's also part of the live Q&A. So if you're interested in hopping over on the RAS Picks YouTube channel, 9 a.m. Pacific time is when you can join in the live stream. It'll run from about 9 to 10:15 is my expectation, with 16 games on the board. Last year, the early week previews went really long just because there were so many questions. You're excited about football. I'm excited about football. Everybody's wanting more football. So it'll be great to get the little community that was born in that channel last year, each and every Wednesday morning, back together again. Hope to see a lot of new faces there as well. That is on the RAS Picks YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So let's get to all of the market movement before we get to thinking about the live stream, because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of which I don't necessarily agree with, too. And it starts off today in the market rundown with the Baltimore Ravens on the road at the Kansas City Chiefs, kicking off tomorrow night. And it was yesterday mid-evening, right around dinner time. Was just throwing some food on, heard the screen light up, got the beeping going on, run over. Sure enough, over money into the market. Something I completely agree with. 45.5s were taken out, 46s were taken out. It was a direct 1.5 point move at circa all the way up to 47.5. No other book got up quite that high. Chris got to 47. A few other books lingered back at 46.5, but Buckeye all the way up to 47. It was a clear move on the over. We'll talk about this game a ton in the preview at 9 a.m. Pacific time over on the YouTube channel. A lot of disagreement internally. I can really make a case for it both ways. I can make a case for both teams. This is going to be a great opener. A lot of props to think about, too. I will certainly touch on that in the preview and then a little bit more in depth tomorrow here on the podcast as well. Jumping over to Friday, there was movement in the Brazil game as well. Initially, some over money came into the market, which I definitely agree with, before under money came back into the market yesterday, all the way back down to 48.5 to match the opener with a 49. The high price currently on the board at circa. All of the 50s were wiped out. We saw a wave of under money, but yesterday afternoon as well, once this game hit 3, kind of anticipated, but there was an opinion that came in on the Green Bay Packers. All of the 3s were taken out, and we're back to Philadelphia, a flat 2.5 minus 110, which is the lowest point spread we've seen on this game in a couple of days. So on the primetime games, we saw the over on Thursday, saw the under come back yesterday in the Friday game, and then there was money coming in on the Green Bay Packers, getting 3 points on the road at Brazil. Both of these teams traveling today on Wednesday. Neither will practice in the stadium. It's going to be a walkthrough day off type of day Thursday. They're going to have a stadium walkthrough Friday and then get right into the game Friday night. So a much different travel week for these teams with the international game than typically what happens for UK or Germany games. Going to be a fun game to watch on Friday, but one I certainly think we see plenty of points in. Getting to the Sunday games, it's Jacksonville on the road at the Miami Dolphins, and this was another game where we saw under money come in. And all of these moves that came in yesterday, there was one from a service, which we'll talk about as we get later into the card, but they all looked like they came from a service, but clearly there was nothing being posted around any of the channels that I follow, none of the services that we follow. It really seemed to be just opinions and bets being put into the market. There was kind of an effort on our part to look through and say, what's going on? What are we seeing? Are there any patterns here? And there just wasn't. So these are just full-on opinions getting put into the market, and the under was the stance taken here. There were 50 showing yesterday mid-afternoon, and those were completely wiped out. We're back down in Jacksonville, Miami here to as low as 48.5 at circa, 49 at Chris, 49s elsewhere across the board. Point spread in this game, Miami out to a 3.5 point favorite, minus 110 is the consensus price, seeing that at Buckeye, as well as a few other offshores as well, driving this market up in favor of the Miami Dolphins. Pittsburgh on the road at the Atlanta Falcons. This is now Atlanta out to a 3.5 point favorite, minus 105. Current price at circa. Buckeye 3 minus 120. Seeing Chris at 3 minus 122. All signs signaling towards Atlanta money continuing to come into the market. And we saw a little bit of confirmation for our release last week on the over. This was around 41.5. Yesterday, late afternoon, there was some over money that came in. Half-point move. This is now up to 42 is the total for the Steelers and the Falcons. Minnesota on the road at the New York Giants. There were some twos showing yesterday, and I wouldn't classify this as a full move. It was more just a recalibration or leveling of the board. Those twos that were listed around minus 105. We saw one at Circa. That got taken out. Now 1.5 is the consensus price across the board for the Minnesota Vikings. Total in this game sitting at 41. I did You Better You Bet with Femi and Nick yesterday, and Nick kind of quietly squeezed in there. Malik Neighbors' prop numbers came out awfully low for how big of a role he has in this offense. And I think the Giants become pretty interesting now with yesterday Brian Daboll saying that he is going to take back play calling duties. His job is on the line. He's an offensive coach first. There's a lot of pressure on him to get this offense right. So he's going to be leading the way instead of Mike Kafka. That's a big announcement for the Giants offense that I think we're going to see have an impact certainly in week one, but all things lining up for Malik Neighbors to be a very big part of this offense against this Vikings defense, which certainly the most aggressive in the NFL up front. Carolina on the road at the New Orleans Saints. This is the game. I mean, we're ping-ponging back and forth, and ping-pong might be an understatement for what we're seeing here. So this was a game that opened at 5.5. It got bet down all the way to 3.5, and this was going back 2, 3, 4 weeks. There was a ton of interest in Carolina. It's a team that, myself included, a lot of different pros and bettors are high on. There's a lot of optimism for Carolina. Got to 3.5. Market said, that's gone too far. And there was a release from another service on the Saints at 3.5, pushed it out to 4. There were bettors that took the 4. It got back to 4.5, came back to 4. Then yesterday, about mid-afternoon, we saw a popular Telegram channel send out the Saints at -4. It pushed it up to 4.5. 30 minutes later, another Telegram channel from an NFL service comes out, sends out the Panthers. We're now back to 4. Are you lost yet with this game? Just a ton of back and forth on this one. We know where we're at, right? We have a clear buy point on the Saints at 3.5. We have a clear buy point on the Panthers at 4.5. The number's sitting 4. You know what to think about and expect as we get into the weekend. From our perspective, we still like the over. It was a release we sent out last week. You've heard it about this week. That total is sitting at 41.5. Wouldn't be surprised to see it tick up to 42. New England on the road at the Cincinnati Bengals. We're still waiting on official confirmation on whether or not Jamar Chase is going to be in the game on Sunday for Cincinnati. The Bengals are sitting as an 8.5-point favorite across the market. Total in this game, 40.5. Really not much to say on this. I think the initial move, which was us on the total, we bet the under. We pushed this down to 40.5 from 42. When you saw the point spread at 9.5, 9 means nothing in the NFL. It's a dead number. And so when you're looking at guys that are just math bettors or playing top down, they see the 9.5. They're going to take that 9.5 out when the total drops as low as it did with a wave of money on the under. And that's now sitting at 8.5. Now, if Chase is ruled in and he is going to play, we might see this total tick back up just a little bit. But we more likely, I think, would see the side get taken out at 8.5, because when we're thinking about teasers for week one, I mean, the Bengals are going to be in every single teaser that might be printed at any sports book anywhere. So it's not going to take a whole lot off of the Chase news to be something that kind of pushes this number back up a little bit on the side. If he is out, well, we might see this total tick down a little bit more. So the confirmation for that release, and we might see the point spread. It's not going to move much if it does, but maybe there's going to be a bit of an appetite with the Bengals going into the season with so many changes at wide receiver. Tennessee Titans on the road at the Chicago Bears. Chicago, a 4-point favorite across the board. Yesterday, the Bears were 4.5-point favorites in the morning, and the first bet that really came out of this wave of money was the Titans being taken out at 4.5. That was viewed as being too much by another group of bettors. You're looking at the 4.5. That was wiped out. The 4s went away. It got to 3.5, and then there was buyback at 3.5 on the other side of 4 to push this back to 4. Was texting with another pro, and we were just going back and forth about how inflated the prices are for Chicago. That's through the whole futures market. Certainly showed in this number, and sure enough, about 20, 30 minutes later, there was a wave of money that came in on the Tennessee Titans. So now you have that clear ceiling for how high this number can get before there's resistance, and that's sitting at 4.5. Now, with how popular the Bears are going to be betting-wise going into Sunday, we might see this number push up a little bit, but to me, that was a very telling position being taken in the market at the 4.5. And, of course, this total was bet up earlier in the week. It is now 45. 2 massive offensive shifts. I think there could still be plenty of appetite for the over if the wind forecast in Chicago, which is about 15 miles per hour, dips as we head closer to kickoff. Arizona on the road at the Buffalo Bills. This is now Buffalo minus 6.5. Wasn't a full move like we saw with some of these other games, but the sixes did get taken out. They're now up to 6.5. Bobby Babbage taking over defensive play calling for the Buffalo Bills. Nothing crazy news-wise showing up for this one. This was just another opinion that got put into the market yesterday. Interesting day of movement, to put it lightly, is how I would say yesterday. And we carry on with the Houston Texans on the road at the Indianapolis Colts. This is 2.5. It was sitting there all week. Another pro I was talking with and texting back and forth, he said he's looking at Indy as his favorite side of the week because it was not getting to 3 despite how much love there was for the Houston Texans. This was already a very inflated number at 2.5. Now even more so as we're seeing it at a soft 3. Nobody, despite the move yesterday, which lit up across the screen, went to 3 minus 10. We're seeing Chris right now as the high point in the market, 3 minus 105. But we're still seeing Bet Online, Pinnacle, FanDuel, Heritage, a few other offshore sports books, WPH, 2.5 minus 115, 2.5 minus 120. Big resistance to go to 3. And so whether there's things behind the scenes with folks buying up to 3 minus 105 on the other side for Indy, or just a realization that this is a very inflated number on a very popular side, that there's a bit of a position being willing to stand pat by sportsbooks here, not going to the full 3. I think it's really telling, even after a move that lit up the screen across the board, we still didn't get onto that key in this spot. So I think there's certainly intrigue and interest for the Colts if this was to get to 3 minus 110. There's certainly a side that I like quite a bit this week as well. Las Vegas on the road at the LA Chargers. Number continues to trickle in as we're at the Chargers 3 minus 10. That's the first flat 3 minus 10 across the board we've seen in a long time for the Chargers in this market, which opened up higher after it was bet up immediately after open with intrigue on the Chargers. That Pinnacle price we talked about yesterday, 3 minus 102, still holding steady in the market. Under money continues to come in as this total now down to a flat 40 at Pinnacle. My goodness, under money aplenty in this one coming in. Washington on the road at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay, a 3.5-point favorite across the board. Total in this game took a lot of over money last week. Is currently sitting at 44. This is the one weather game we might see again. Kevin Roth publishes his weather report right around 12 p.m. Eastern time. If there's a game I think could be flagged orange, this would be it. And I think that's what's holding this total down. 65% chance of rain. We're seeing 10 to 15 mile per hour sustained winds with the chance to go higher. This would be an absolute wide open, high-scoring game if there's no weather, if there's no wind. But we'll see if that weather forecast and that flag put on it might ultimately hold this total down from going up even higher. Denver, on the road at Seattle. We'll talk about Detroit in just a second. Seattle, a 6-point favorite across the board with a total of 42. Not much movement on this game yesterday. Dallas on the road at Cleveland. Browns still holding steady as a 2.5-point favorite across the board. Total in this game, 41 flat at BetOnline, 41.5 most other places. This was 42 when we last talked yesterday. Under money from that same wave. I want to say it's all originating in a very similar spot, but under money hit the market yesterday and took out those 42s, brought it down to as low as 41. Sunday Night Football, LA Rams on the road at the Detroit Lions. That Detroit money finally showed yesterday. We're now back up to Lions 3.5 minus 115, minus 105 at Circa, minus 110 at Buckeye. Chris, the high point. We saw that move originate out there as well, pushing that number up. Total in this game still holding steady at 51. And then we talked about the release from the known service. That was on the San Francisco 49ers yesterday, 6 a.m., just shortly after the live stream of this podcast and uploads to Apple and Spotify occurred. We saw a release on the San Francisco 49ers at minus 3.5. Why did the release come in? Trent Williams was back at practice, signed this deal. Christian McCaffrey was back at practice. 49ers offense went from 24 hours ago, as we were talking here, with major uncertainty at a number of key spots, to all of a sudden getting those resolved seemingly overnight. Put my head on the pillow, woke up, and it was like, okay, 49ers are set and they're good to go. And that was something that kind of hinted at yesterday on the podcast and said, like, if these guys are in, it's going to go up. And it certainly did. We're now back to 4.5 across the board after the release. After some bets came in, there was most certainly some adjustment by sportsbooks for those guys being in and being on the field. The total, 44. Again, that was a number that was dipping really low, but now that you have such a bump to the 49ers offense, that total is going to go up. And you think about where we opened with this total, way back it was 45.5. So there's still potentially some room for this total to go up a little bit further, I would say is a fair estimation to make. I think the 49ers are probably going to be a popular side when it comes to first half and first quarter bets. Lots to still sort of sort out with this market as we go, because this did open 49ers -6. There was undoubtedly Jets positions taken at those numbers prior to any doubt with any of these guys being there, and we're going back down 6-7 weeks. So there's certainly intrigue at the Jets at 6, at 5.5, and at 5. Now back to 4.5 after these guys are ruled in. It feels like, to me, the side is in a pretty good spot. But I think we might see the total maybe a half point or so head up over back towards that original opener. Folks are intrigued and inclined to buy that, with the Jets' offensive improvement being inevitable. And now all those guys in and ready to go for the 49ers on the offensive side as well. Live stream again, as the reminder, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern time over on the RAS Picks YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, would love to have you over there for the live stream. If you're already watching on YouTube, it will be great to have you back here on the channel at 9 a.m. Pacific as well. Lots to talk about, lots to preview. I've got a lot of thoughts and a lot of potential picks on a lot of these games too. So it is going to be a great Wednesday live stream, and great to have everybody back. If you're just listening on the podcast side, I'll have that upload for you later today. But have a fantastic Wednesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.